$8.30. That was everything Dominic Lowe had in his wallet the morning. His car broke down on Route 9, 3 miles from the gas station, in the middle of a February that had decided to be cruel about it. Not just cold, the kind of cold that gets into your coat before you've even stepped outside, the kind that makes your face hurt when you breathe. He'd pushed the car to the shoulder, called his supervisor to say he'd be late, and started walking. He was 31 years old. He worked the overnight shift stocking shelves at Ridgeline Market, the kind of grocery store that smelled like floor wax and rotisserie chicken and had fluorescent lights that buzzed just slightly off-key. He'd been there 4 years. He knew every aisle, every vendor schedule, every squeaky wheel on cart number 7. He made $14.20 an hour, and he was grateful for it, genuinely, because he'd had worse. He'd had a lot worse. By the time he reached the gas station, his ears were numb and his boots had soaked through. He went inside to warm up, bought nothing, because he was trying to make that $8 stretch to Thursday, and stood by the coffee machine for a few minutes, pretending to read the labels on the creamer cups. That's when he saw the old man. He was sitting on the curb outside the station, just to the left of the air pump, wearing a jacket that was too thin for the weather and holding a paper bag against his chest like it was something precious. He wasn't young, mid-70s, maybe older, with white hair and a face that had been lived in hard. He was just sitting there, not panhandling, not making eye contact with anyone, just sitting with that bag and the cold. Dominic watched him through the glass for a moment. He went back inside, looked at the hot food display. The gas station kind. Under a heat lamp, the sad rotating hot dogs and the foil-wrapped breakfast sandwiches. He asked the woman behind the counter how much for the egg and cheese. $3.85, she said. He bought it. He bought a small coffee, too, the cheapest size. That left him with $2 and some change. He brought both outside. The old man looked up when Dominic crouched down in front of him. Not suspicious, not grateful yet. Just looked, the way someone looks when they've stopped expecting much from strangers. "You've been out here a while," Dominic said. It wasn't a question. The man nodded slowly. "Car trouble," he said. "Waiting on my son, he doesn't always answer right away." Dominic held out the sandwich and the coffee. The man looked at them for a full second. "I didn't ask," the man said. "I know you didn't." Another pause. Then the man took them, carefully, the way you take something when you're trying not to let on how much you needed it. He unwrapped the sandwich and took a bite, and for a moment he closed his eyes. "Thank you," he said. Just that. Dominic stood up. He had $2 left. He had 3 miles to walk. He had a shift that started in 40 minutes and a supervisor who'd already heard one excuse today. "You going to be all right?" Dominic asked. "My son'll come," the man said. "He always comes. He's just slow about it." Dominic nodded. He left. He made it to work 11 minutes late. His supervisor, a thin man named Perry, who wore the same gray fleece every day, told him that was the second time this month and pointed at the schedule like it was evidence. Dominic said, "Yes, sir," clocked in, and went to go stock the cereal aisle. He didn't think about the old man again, not in any conscious way. He had other things to think about. The transmission estimate he'd gotten 2 weeks ago and hadn't been able to afford, the electric bill, his mother's medications copay that had gone up again without explanation. He had a full inventory of worries, and he moved through them the way he moved through the aisles. Methodically, without drama, restocking as needed. That was Dominic's way. He didn't complain loudly. He didn't announce his difficulties. People who knew him casually would have described him as quiet. Maybe a little serious, maybe a little hard to read. What they might not have known, what most people at Ridgeline didn't know, was that Dominic Lowe held a degree in supply chain management from state, graduated 4th in his class, had spent 2 years working logistics for a regional distribution company before it folded in a restructuring, and had been applying to operations and warehouse management positions for going on 18 months without a single callback that led anywhere. He was good at his job. Better than good. Perry knew it, in the vague way managers know things they don't want to act on. Dominic had reorganized the back receiving system in his 2nd month. cutting their restock time by 20 minutes a shift. He'd flagged a vendor billing discrepancy that saved the store $1,100. He'd trained 3 new hires who'd all been promoted before him. None of that had translated into anything. Not a title change. Not a raise beyond the annual cost of living adjustment. Not a conversation about where he might go from here. He'd stopped waiting for that conversation. 2 days after the gas station, Dominic came in for his shift and found Perry standing near the break room with a man he didn't recognize. The stranger was older, maybe 60, wearing a button-down and slacks that didn't look like they belonged in a grocery store. Perry was doing the laugh he did when he was trying to impress someone, head tilted, shoulders loose, nodding too much. Dominic clocked in. He went to the back. He didn't give it much more thought. But then Perry found him in aisle 9 at 10:30 and said, "Hey, guy up front wants to talk to you." "To me?" That's what he said. The man was waiting near the customer service desk. Up close, Dominic could see he was older than he'd first thought. Maybe 65, with reading glasses pushed up on his head and a way of standing that suggested he was used to rooms paying attention to him. He extended his hand when Dominic approached. "Dominic Lowe," the man said. "I'm Sutton Grayfield. I own Grayfield Distribution." Dominic shook his hand. He didn't recognize the name yet. "My father," Sutton said. "He was at a gas station on Route 9 2 days ago. He called me, told me what you did." He paused. "He doesn't call me about things. He's not. He's a pretty private man. When he calls me to tell me a stranger bought him breakfast in the cold, I pay attention." Dominic was quiet for a moment. "He was just sitting out there," he said. "It wasn't anything. It was something," Sutton said. "To him it was." There was a pause between them. Not uncomfortable. More like the kind that happens when a conversation is about to shift directions and both people can feel it. "I looked you up," Sutton said. "I know that sounds strange, but my father gave me your name." Perry confirmed it. "I found your résumé online." He looked at Dominic directly. "Supply chain, State University, 4.0 in your major. 2 years with Kellerman Logistics before the closure. 18 months here." He gestured lightly at the shelves around them. "You've been applying." Dominic said nothing. "I have a mid-level operations coordinator position that's been open for 4 months, Sutton said. "We run regional distribution for 14 counties. I've interviewed 11 people. None of them knew the difference between a push-and-pull inventory system, which I find remarkable." He said it without humor, just observation. "I have a feeling you do." "I do," Dominic said. "Would you be willing to sit down with me?" "Formally, this week if possible." Dominic looked at him. He was trying to read the situation, not suspicious exactly, but careful in the way he'd learned to be careful about things that sounded too clean. Life had taught him that most things that sounded too clean had a footnote. "Why the personal visit?" he asked. "You could have called." Sutton considered that. "Fair question. Honestly, my father is not an easy man. He grew up without much. He doesn't accept help from people. The fact that he called me, specifically to tell me about you, specifically to say he thought I should know about you, that meant something. I wanted to see for myself who I was dealing with before I sent a formal email." He said it plainly, not like a sales pitch, like a man who said what he meant and expected the same in return. Dominic nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. "I'll sit down with you." He almost talked himself out of it 3 times before Thursday. The first time was Tuesday night, when he was sitting at his kitchen table with the transmission estimate and the electric bill, and he did the math on what the interview outfit would cost, because he hadn't bought dress clothes since his cousin's wedding 3 years ago, and they didn't fit right anymore. He sat with that for a while. Then he went to the back of his closet and found a shirt he'd forgotten about, a white Oxford his mother had sent him for Christmas the year before, still in the packaging. The second time was Wednesday morning when he called his mother to tell her about it, and she said, "Baby, that's wonderful." And then there was a pause and she said, "Be careful." And he knew exactly what she meant, and he didn't argue with it because she wasn't wrong. She'd watched him get careful about hope. She'd watched it happen over 18 months of applications and near misses and one interview at a firm downtown. where the interviewer had spent 20 minutes asking him about his journey to retail in a tone that made it clear. He didn't think Dominic had taken a wrong turn, so much as arrived at his natural destination. She'd watched what that did to him, and she was being protective. He understood. "I know," he told her, "but I'm going." The third time was Thursday morning, in his car outside the Grayfield distribution offices, a low industrial building set back from the road with a clean parking lot and a reception area visible through the glass. He sat there for 4 minutes. He thought about the $8. He thought about the old man on the curb with the paper bag. He thought about the fact that he had done that thing, bought that sandwich, spent that money. Not because he was angling for anything, not because he was performing goodness for an audience, but because it was cold, and the man was sitting there and it seemed like the obvious thing to do. He'd done it and walked away and not thought about it again. That part mattered to him, not the return, the fact that there had been no calculation. He got out of the car. The interview lasted 2 hours and 20 minutes. Sutton Grayfield was not a man who asked questions to fill time. He asked about the Kellerman closure and what Dominic had seen coming before it happened and what he would have done differently. He asked about the billing discrepancy at Ridgeline. He pulled out a scenario, a real one, from an actual distribution snarl they'd had 8 months ago, and spread the documents on the table and asked Dominic to walk him through how he'd untangle it. Dominic untangled it. He identified the bottleneck in the second transfer node, caught the vendor miscommunication in the receiving log, and suggested a contingency rerouting system that Sutton's current team hadn't implemented. Sutton wrote something down and didn't say anything for a moment. "How long did that take you?" he asked. "To figure out? Probably 6 minutes." Sutton looked at him. "My operations director spent 4 days on that problem." Dominic didn't respond to that. "I'm going to be direct with you," Sutton said. He leaned back. "This position pays $62,000 to start, with a performance review at 6 months. The work is not glamorous. You'll manage a team of 8, handle vendor relationships, oversee receiving and outbound logistics for the northern counties. There's room to grow here, genuinely, but that's not something I can promise. I can only tell you what's happened for people who've been good at this job and stayed." "What happened to them?" Dominic asked. "2 are district managers. One is my VP of operations. She started where you'd be starting." Dominic nodded. "I want to offer you the position," Sutton said. "But I want to be clear that I'm offering it because of your credentials and what I saw today, not because of what happened at the gas station. That's what got you in the room. You're what's keeping you in the room." That distinction mattered. Dominic could tell Sutton meant it as a kind of respect, the refusal to let the kindness become the whole story, to let the transaction flatten everything into a feel-good narrative. He appreciated it. "I accept," Dominic said. His last day at Ridgeline was a Thursday, same as the day he'd been hired. Perry shook his hand in the parking lot after the shift and said he wasn't surprised, which was the closest Perry ever came to a compliment. 2 of the overnight crew, a young woman named Adaisy and a college kid who went by Spoon for reasons no one had ever fully explained, bought him a cupcake from the bakery section and sang an off-key version of a song that wasn't quite a farewell song but was close enough. He drove home on Route 9. He passed the gas station. He didn't stop. But he slowed down when he went by, and he looked at the curb by the air pump, and he thought about the old man sitting there with his paper bag and his thin jacket and his quiet certainty that his son would come eventually. He always comes. He's just slow about it. Dominic thought about that for a long time on the drive home. About patience. About what it takes to sit in the cold and believe that something is coming even when you can't see it yet. He thought about his mother's voice on the phone. Be careful. And the 18 months, and the cereal aisle, and the 4 minutes he'd sat in the parking lot trying to talk himself out of walking through that door. He'd bought a sandwich for a stranger. That was all. He hadn't done it for a reward. He hadn't even done it as an act of great moral courage. It was just a sandwich, just a cup of coffee, just 2 people sharing a cold morning at a gas station on a road that neither of them had planned to be on that day. But something had come of it, something real, something that changed the shape of what came next. 6 months later, Dominic Lowe sat across from Sutton at a quarterly review and listened to his team's performance numbers read back to him. Inventory accuracy up 9%. Vendor dispute resolution time cut in half. 2 process improvements adopted company-wide. Performance review, Sutton said, sliding a paper across the table. You'll see a salary adjustment to 74. We're also looking at an expanded role in Q1. I want to talk about that before you leave today. Dominic looked at the paper. He didn't let himself react immediately. He just breathed for a second, the way you breathe when something you'd stopped letting yourself fully want has quietly become real. Thank you, he said. You earned it, Sutton said, simply, the way facts are stated. On his lunch break, Dominic called his mother. I wanted to tell you something, he said when she picked up. He heard her pause, the familiar pause, waiting to calibrate. Good or bad, she asked. Good, he said. Really good. She made a sound he hadn't heard her make in a while. It took him a second to recognize it as relief, the kind that's been held in so long it almost sounds like crying when it finally comes out. Tell me, she said. He told her. There's a version of this story where the point is that good deeds get rewarded, and you should be kind because something might come back to you. That version exists. It's easy to tell. But Dominic Lowe spent 8 of his last dollars on a cold morning, not because he was investing in a future return. He spent them because an old man was sitting on a curb in the February cold, and it seemed like the obvious thing to do. He spent them and walked away and didn't think about it again. The question isn't what happened to Dominic after that. The question is what happens in all the times, and there are many, many more of those. When no one's watching, when no sun makes a call, when the kindness just disappears into the cold morning and nothing comes back. Would you still stop?